So now let's consider functions in a bit more detail, and in doing this I'm going to be explaining arguments and return types. I'm going to return back to our player control script, and right now you can see we've got this code here which is responsible for firing our ammunition. But now as we develop this class, it could be that there are other situations in which we want to fire our weapon. Now, if we wanted to fire our weapon in different scenarios, we would have to copy and paste this code to ensure that we fired the ammunition and that we reduce the ammo count. But I don't really want to get involved with this copy and pasting because it creates a lot of duplicated code. What would be really good is if I could create a fire weapon function that fired our weapon for us, and whenever we wanted to fire our weapon, all we had to do was just use one line called the fire weapon function. So that is what I'm going to do. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to completely delete all of this code inside here that fires the weapon, and I'm just going to call a function which is going to be fire weapon, like so. So that's all we're going to have to fire our weapon. But of course, I'm calling a fire weapon function, but I haven't created a fire weapon function anywhere in this code just yet. Now, I have gone ahead off screen and created a fire weapon function, and I'm going to paste that into my script file here and then explain how the code works. So I'm going to insert a new line in here and press Ctrl V on the keyboard to insert the fire weapon function into our script file, and you can see that we've added a fire weapon function here in the code that I have highlighted. So how does this function work? So we have our fire weapon function, and there are really three parts to this function declaration which you can see on this line here. We have the return type, which in this case is given as a string, which means a sequence of letters. Then we have the name of the function, which is fire weapon, and then we have the inputs to the function. These are called arguments, and here the argument is the number of bullets, and the type of this argument is an integer. So what this really can be thought of as is the name of our function is fire weapon. It takes a set of inputs, in this case just one input, which is number of bullets, and it gives out a string value. So what we want to do with this fire weapon function is say, okay, we want to fire the weapon, how many bullets should we fire? And we can choose. We might be able to fire 1 bullet, 2 bullets, 10 bullets, and we can pass that number into here as an argument, and then it will, when the function is completed, it will give out a string value, a sequence of characters. So let's have a look at how this function works. On the very first line, which is this one here inside the brackets, we have a check. We are checking, is the ammo less than or equal to 0? In other words, have we run out of ammo? And if the answer to that question is yes, or if the answer to that question is true, then we end the function using this return statement. Whenever we encounter the return statement, it means that the function is coming to a stop. So we call the return statement and we give an output. The output, remember, matches the string return type. So we are giving the output fired nothing, which is a sequence of characters. And at this point, at the semicolon, the function ends. So all the rest of it, these statements here, are completely ignored. If the ammo is less than or equal to 0, then the function ends at the end of this statement here. And at that point, it just carries on afterwards. So when we call on the fire weapon here, if we have no ammunition left, it returns fired nothing and then just carries on at this line here. We never get to execute this. But, of course, if we do have ammunition left, if the answer to this question is false, then this return statement is ignored and we can carry on here. And we begin with a for loop. And what this for loop does is it begins at 0 and it loops around for the number of bullets that we want to fire. Now this is a variable, this argument, so we could put in here 1 bullet, 2 bullets, 3 bullets, and this will loop around and fire however many bullets we have specified for number of bullets. And then finally we have this ammo statement where we're calculating what the new ammo count should be, and it should be ammo equals ammo minus the number of bullets that we need to fire, and finally it returns the string fired weapon and the function ends. So here when we call fire weapon, we are already making a mistake because look at this argument list, it's completely empty. We need to tell it how many bullets we want to fire. So let's say that we want to fire 3 bullets. I can put the number inside these brackets 3. Now when fire weapon is called, it will put in the number 3 for the argument number of bullets. So let's press Ctrl S on the keyboard to save that, minimize mono develop and press play on the toolbar. Let's select the player object so that we can see their ammo count, and I'm going to press space on the keyboard and you can see that we've reduced it to 7, now we've reduced it to 4, now we've reduced it to 1 because we're firing that many bullets. So I'm going to press play here to stop that, return back to mono develop, and what we are doing is we are firing 3 bullets every time. We could of course change this fire weapon to, let's say, 10 bullets. Press Ctrl S on the keyboard to save that, press space, press play here, press space on the keyboard, and straight away in the ammo count you can see that we have fired all 10 of our bullets already. So I'm going to return now to mono develop and we have our function here. What I'm going to do is switch the fired weapon back to 1 so we fire only 1 bullet at a time. Now what we can do, you'll notice that the fire weapon function has a return type of string, which means that it gives out a string. Either the string is fired nothing or is fired weapon. And since this gives out a string, it means that this function call here ultimately resolves to this string value because it is the output of the function. This basically means that we can come in here and write the debug.log statement like so, and we can put the fire weapon function into that and print out the string that it gives. So debug.log is normally used to print strings, but because this fire weapon function resolves or outputs a string through the return statement, it means we can print that to the debug.log function. So I'm going to press Ctrl S on the keyboard to save that, minimize mono develop, and return back to our game, press play on the toolbar here, and then press spacebar to fire our weapon, and suddenly we see fired weapon. Now we're going to keep on seeing that until we run out of ammo, at which point it's going to say fired nothing, because now we've run out of ammo. So that really is an overview of how you can get up and running with functions using arguments and return types. I recommend making good use of functions because they can save you an enormous amount of work.